Hello and welcome to On Air with Owen. Me, Owen Richards, founder and CEO of Air Marketing, your go-to for outsourced B2B sales and marketing, and my new co-host, fellow business owner and great friend, Neil Finnie.
Hey everyone, Neil Finnie here, founder of the Generator Work Hub, a co-working space here in the beautiful Exeter, and also Next Gen Careers, a professional development program nurturing the talents of tomorrow.
Each week, we'll be diving into the everyday truths around running your own business. And trust me, we're not sugarcoating anything. It's all about the highs, the lows, and everything between when you run your own business as a founder.
Expect candid conversations and valuable insights between the two of us. Plus, we'll be joined by some special guests along the way.
So, time to sit back and tune in to this week's honest conversation. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On Air with me, Owen Richards, and my good friend and co-host, Neil Finnie. Neil, how are we?
Better
than?
Well, like, obviously it was sad time Sunday night, all that anticipation. But I'm all right, I'm over it. I think I got over it pretty quickly.
Just for listeners' sake, Sunday night, you might be listening to this in the future, but we're recording this a few days after England have lost in the European Championship final against Spain. Disappointing, wasn't it?
Yeah, like I think I spoke to someone at the space about this, and it was before the final, and I think because we'd played quite badly in the group stages, and then we'd kind of improved. I was like, if we do win it, do we deserve it, or should we give it back? And I was like, can you do that? Be like, look, we've got it. We shouldn't really have it, so I think it's best we give it back. So then we got to the final. We played quite well against the Dutch, and it was like, but then if we'd lost, if we hadn't lost, if we'd won, I think I would have felt pretty sorry for Spain, because they've been the team of the tournament. They were the team of the evening of that night. So poor old Andre would have been crying into his tapas, and I would have felt quite guilty about the win. But I suppose I would have taken it, and I wouldn't have given it back.
Well, you don't even need to worry about that because it didn't happen. It just didn't happen, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're not going to talk about football for the whole podcast, just to be clear, if you don't care about football. And we'll link it in some way into something, but it didn't feel right, did it? The whole tournament, it didn't quite feel like it came together. And, everyone's an armchair sofa fan and an armchair football coach, aren't they? And it's easy for us to say, but it never quite felt like things ticked in the way that it has done in previous tournaments at times, or in qualification. And actually, our qualification at times was a little bit, or the last couple of years has been a bit up and down, hasn't it? So that's led Southgate to leave. So 8 years, and he's moved on and he's gone. And I think that probably links us into what we're going to talk about today, which is leadership changes and how you manage change around key people leaving within a team, within a business. But before we move on from football, let's talk about the Southgate thing. What's your take on that? You think he should have gone? Good decision?
It's a strange one, isn't it? Like if you relate to business, he's been pretty successful. Two Euro finals and a semi-final and the World Cup sandwiched between, but seen as failure because of the way that we've played, or maybe kind of how we've got there. I've been thinking about it in other businesses. Do you care as long as the outcome kind of is achieved? We don't say, so Owen, have you had a bit of sexy sales today? Is that what?
Yes, we don't do that.
It's weird. Like, is there any other business where you look at leaders not just based on the outcomes, but also in how it's been achieved?
And I think that's that fine line between business, sport, and entertainment, right? We have to also just caveat the fact that not all businesses are the same, and football is an entertainment thing, isn't it? Ultimately, there's an element of you've got to entertain to some degree, and we're paying good money to watch it for that reason, not because you don't go to the first group game because you want them to win it. You go to the first group game because you want them to win that game, not the tournament, and then the tournament win comes later. I don't know, but you're right. It's a weird one because style matters far more than it does in other areas, particularly when it comes to the perception of successful leadership.
Yeah, and I think that's it's an oddity around football. But then you look at the leader, and okay, he's made the decision. I don't think he's been pushed. I think his contract was up until the end of the year, so maybe there was rumblings that it wouldn't be renewed. He won it. That's a really difficult question because you have success, but then you don't get to continue on to the next venture. But then you start thinking about, okay, so he goes, who do you replace him with? Who's out there? And you look at the leaders in the football world, and you go, well, actually, do we go an English manager for the English national team? And you've got Eddie Howe, who's doing, I guess, a relatively good job at Newcastle. But can you prize him away? Then you've got Graham Potter, who's been out of work for 3 years,
couple of years, yeah.
But then you're like, well, do you bring in someone that's maybe going to play the kind of football that we want, but isn't an English manager and have had some success? So you're looking at Pochettino and Klopp. I think if we could, I'd go Klopp. I think he's got that kind of time in the English Premier League and the way he plays, and I think motivating the players would be the key thing. So I don't know. I think it's time for a change. I think it's a bit stale. I think even if we need something new, something different.
It's a weird thought having the men's and women's team, England team, both managed by Germans, isn't it? The irony of that would be not lost. And I think moving aside from football to a little bit, I think I kind of agree with your take on it when it comes to the football piece there. But we'll talk about that in the pub a little bit more. I think the interesting thing on the decision from Gareth is that there's two points of view on that. So there's Gareth's and then the teams, and I think Gareth did have no choice, and I think it was the right thing for him because whatever happened, he was damned from now, and it was a lose-lose situation for him. I think it was that going into the tournament, and my view was whatever happened in that tournament, either he wins it and he should go out on a high because you don't want to stay long enough to ruin your legacy and to be seen as a failure when you've been successful. I would have done that if I were him, or he lost it and he's had another go, and everyone would be dissatisfied because we're English and that's what we do unless we win it. And I think to your point earlier, you're also actually proving the point. You'd have been dissatisfied if we did win it because of the way that we won it. And that's
it's that entertainment piece.
Yeah,
again, as a Spurs fan, we don't win anything. Any other team in there, please don't hit me too hard. But at least I want some attractive football. So I guess for me is watching the entertainment side of football. For me, is far more important, I think, than winning. But that's because we are,
we brought up, as a Southampton fan, I hear you, mate, because there's no point in holding out for winning something. So I think from Gareth's perspective, and this is just like, let's put this into business perspective, leaders do have to sometimes decide to step aside, and sometimes that's right for them outside of work. It's right for them, their legacy, their happiness. That I think it only would have got harder for Gareth. And it's another 2 years before you get the chance to win something. And let's face it, there'll be 31 other countries trying to win that at the same time. It's not like he's guaranteed success at that point. So I think he's damned if he did and damned if he didn't. And I think you better to walk away from that at that point in time. And you're right. The view back in the future will be it's been successful. And then there's the team's perspective on that, which is that we sometimes need change, and we need change enforced on us in order to see an opportunity to try something a new way. And if you always wait for the perfect answer before you decide to change it, actually you can often stay with the status quo for longer. Whereas in this scenario, sometimes jumping in the unknown and going, well, we don't know who the perfect person is, but let's follow a process and trust the process to find the right person. And if it takes us 3 weeks, great. If it takes us 3 years to find the right person, we might have to kiss a few frogs on the way through. But actually, for the long-term plan, that's better than us carrying down the inevitable road of keeping doing the same thing that might have got us some of the way there, but not all of the way there. And I think that business context is interesting because we've both had, over the last couple of weeks, key people in our businesses have changes, or step aside or step back. And, we've obviously been through that a lot of times in running business generally. And it's always a funny one to manage it, isn't it? Because when people leave, I'm always a believer that there's a reason, and that reason is okay. Yes, it might be hard for a period of time and things might step backwards for you to step forwards, but it always presents an opportunity to move forwards. And usually you can justify it as being the right thing when you look back 12 months later, even though you might not be able to in the time. And yeah, interested on your take on that, whether you kind of live by that, things happen for a reason, and kind of always tend to work themselves out if you've got a good process to look after it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm very much that believer of things do happen for that reason. If your numbers on the bus, it'll get you wherever you are, whether that's in business or in life. It's I guess trying in a way to minimize that impact. And I think this kind of takes me to the stuff that we're actually doing with a lot of organizations in terms of their HR departments and more career planning for all of their team. Not just senior leaders, but all the way across an organizational structure. Because I think what we've had in the past are organizations that want to hold on to staff because we know how difficult it is to retrain, to recruit, to find the right people, which means that we tend to hold on to some people that maybe we're not fully satisfied with, but making a change, better the devil you know. But what we definitely don't want to do is those people that are great, we don't want them to maybe know how great they are and the opportunities that could lie ahead, because it could mean they lie ahead away from our organization. And what we tend to do there, what we find organizations do, is their career planning for their staff is non-existent. And then you get hit with okay, I'm handing in my notice. What? You're handing in your notice? Why are you handing in your notice? You've given me 3 months notice, whatever your terms are. And now I've got to replace that person. I've got to change my structure. Whereas what we're doing with organizations now is like, you need to be preempting that 6 months to 12 months ahead. So you've got a succession plan. When that person leaves, you can find it. But the only way you can do that is be very open with them, and them to be very open with you in terms of what they want from their career and what they want from that next step. And it might mean them leaving the organization because there's not a next step for them, or it's not working out in their current position. But what it tends to do is, rather than give you that knee-jerk reaction of I'm leaving in 3 months, you've got maybe 6 months to plan, because I'm not satisfied with where I am at the moment. I'm looking for this. I'm not getting this. And you might be like, well, we can't achieve that with you in what we have within our organization. But what we can do is we can support you and take that next step in your career. And if that's not with us and it's with someone else, then so be it. But that will allow an organization to recruit in a more structured and sustainable way, so we don't necessarily have those knee-jerk reactions. Or it could be that a new role is developed for someone else coming in because the way that we had it structured doesn't work anyway. So I think the thing is, yes, things happen for a reason, but I think too often organizations aren't prepared for when those changes happen. And then what happens where it does become knee-jerk, that you replace potentially like for like, just want to fill a position, or you want to fill a vacancy, and then you might hire the wrong person, or it goes through that process. Because I think there's a stat out there that 50% of new hires fail within the first 6 months. And because you're making those snap decisions, you want a much longer process and bring that individual on as well in terms of that recruitment. So I think yes, things happen for a reason. It always works out better, but I think there could always be better planning for it.
So let me ask you a question. There's something you said in there that I think is worth clarifying, and just providing a bit more context around. As I understand what you just said, you're encouraging an organization to openly say to somebody that we might not have that opportunity for you, and we're okay with the fact that us developing you and helping you progress into that future role, we're okay with that not being with us if it's not right.
Yeah. And we see that with some of these progressive organizations now. Day one, when someone arrives, is like, we would love for you and I to be together forever, but we know from the stats that that's unlikely to happen. Mm-hmm. Within 2 to 3 years, on average, someone will change their role, change their position. Mm-hmm. And we're acknowledging that. What we want to do as an organization is we want to make sure that you are successful with us, but also in your career. And if that's away from us, so be it. We're going to support you in that. And we're going to make sure as much as we can that you are progressing to be the best professional that you can be.
Interesting.
So like organizations, I say those that are very progressive, look on this as something that's valuable. A lot of others are like, why am I spending time and effort? I don't want people to leave. But you have to be more, you have to approach it in a more positive way, because that person will give you more time. They will probably work for you in more dedication. Mm. You'll be seen as a good employer. They're not going to want to leave you in the lurch. They're going to ensure that, you know, that contingency plans that you're putting together is more fail safe. You know, you're going to be able to do that. So we tend to find it works in a more positive light than those that just be like, right, this is your job, you're with us. Because when they leave, they don't.
And fair to say that, like, as an organization grows, those opportunities, it might not be for everybody, it won't be for everybody, but for some, that opportunity will come in the organization, and then they're better equipped and they can move faster and succeed, will be more likely to see when they succeed when they get there.
100%. You know, there are still those growth plans within the organization, but what it also battles or counters is those people that get comfortable. They're in a job. They're getting their paycheck. Do they love their job? No, but they don't know how to take that next step. And it's not within the organization. And then there's the fear of leaving, or there's that uncertainty of the what next. And they're not getting support from their organization, from the company they're working with in terms of their career planning. So they don't know what to do. You know, they're like this rabbit in the headlights, so they just stay. And that's not good for them. And it's not good for the organization. But those that middle tier that can bloat an organization. What you want is you want to be able to move that person on so they improve in their professional next steps. And you can replace someone that's fresh, that's hungry, that's wanting to learn and is eager to take those kind of next steps. So you can also remove some of that bloating of those individuals that are just comfortable.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's one of those things in a lot of workplaces where there's the elephant in the room syndrome around people leaving, where it's like nobody really wants to talk about it. Nobody really wants to acknowledge it. Nobody, people see it as a negative thing. And I've done a lot of work to try and change that perception in air, where I call it red carpet in, red carpet out. I want people to feel as special on the way out of the business as they did when they were joining, and as excited and positive. And I think, we've seen that work for us in so many ways. Sometimes great people come back to us. And that might be that they've evolved and they come back in a different role. And that's happened several times where we've got somebody now in our team that was at an account management level, was their first account management role. They went off, did an account management role in another business, got a different view, different client base. That business is much bigger than ours, much more mature. They've learned different ways of doing things, been in a more corporate environment, and then has come back as an account director, managing account managers, because they've seen how that's gone, and they didn't have that opportunity to step up there. And they really liked the smaller business environment and the culture that we have versus that corporate world. But actually, if they'd have gone on a straight line to that role, I don't think they would have been anywhere near as equipped to do as good a job as they're doing. So it worked out. Now, other people go off and they never come back, and that's fine. But the point is that opportunity was there and that relationship stayed, because when that person left, they weren't made to feel bad about it. It was celebrated. It was a congratulations. We're really happy for you. I can see why this is the right call for you. And on the way out, we say cheers and we thank them for the work that they've done. And this is part of the journey. And yet so many people, I've heard it where people are leaving the business and they say, my boss hasn't spoken to me since I handed my notice in. And it's like, oh, wow, like, this is just so backwards in mindset. But it's almost like it's human nature, isn't it? Because it's seen as a relationship, but it's not. It's a business transaction. and people forget that.
Yeah, and it's and I've definitely not been perfect when people have handed their notice in. You know, I think sometimes, especially as a small business, it can be a personal feeling of, oh, you know, really, you know, would like to have known about it earlier, and you know, I've reacted in the wrong ways at times. But I think, you know, from our side, we're very much more about that red carpet in, red carpet out, which I think is the way that you need to approach it, and also understand that it's not a job for life anymore. You know, Rich, who I spoke about in terms of a mentor coach, you know, he always said that at GVI, he wanted everyone to stay for life. That's not possible, because the internal development and opportunities just aren't there within any business. Not, you know, everyone wants to progress, and eventually you're gonna get to a level where that's it. That's impossible. You're not going to go any further. You need to take that next step with another organization.
What's your view? Here's a question for you. We were discussing this. When someone hands in their notice, and I'm not talking about a junior person that's, it sounds awful to say this. I'm trying to think of a way of saying it that doesn't sound like I undervalue people, but you know, it's part of the machine that just kind of, you can take one out and you put another one in, and it's okay. It won't disrupt the business. But when you get to a certain level within a business, they own a certain amount of things that maybe only they can do, where they've innovated, they've created those things. You know, heads of departments, managers, leaders, whatever, C-level. When they're leaving, what's your approach on how quickly do you tell people? Because there's obviously going to be a reaction. However, and my view is, if you embrace people leaving in a positive light, that reaction should be smaller, because they're used to that being comfortable. And in some businesses, people never leave, so it's a bigger thing. In other businesses, you have a higher churn, so it's a bit more normal and a bit more, you know, they're a bit more used to it. But do you think you should be going out and telling people quickly and letting people know? Or do you think you should be holding until you've got a clear plan and you're in before you tell people?
Look, I think it really depends on the situation. It depends on what that individual's working on. You know, I don't necessarily think it's the size of the organization, but if someone has been heading up, I don't know, you're after a new client, they've been dealing with the communication with that, you know, they've got the team behind them that are kind of all moving in that direction. And within their notice period, that's going to be completed. Do you want to upset the apple cart? Do you want everyone to know? Is everyone going to drive in the same direction? So I think it really depends on not the type of organization, but more how that individual's working at any particular time. I think telling people at the right time makes sense. And it can galvanize people to tell them, hey, this is the last hurrah. This is kind of how we're going to finish. And we go back to the football analogies, you know, Klopp, you know, he highlighted very early, you know, mid-season, you know, this is the end for me. This is the end of the road. Did that galvanize the team to push them on towards the end? Potentially, yes. But then we've seen it at times as well where managers have maybe said, right, I'm off. And the team are like, well, if you're going, I'm going. You know, you can't the project here, because I came in because you told me about the vision that you had, and this is what you were working towards. You go, you know, what happens to that vision? So I think it really depends. You know, dealing with it quickly and it not getting out through third parties, because then that's even worse, isn't it? You know, you get the whispers going around the office, and you know, someone's around the corner saying, you know, Joe Bloggs is off in a couple of months. Oh, I didn't know, and he's my director. Why wasn't I told? Why am I being kept in the loop? So I think it really is based on a case-by-case basis, but this is hopefully why we have our HR teams, that we can speak and say, how is this going to impact? Let's really look at, you know, who's being impacted, what projects are being impacted, and let's create the best plan of action. And it could be, let's wait until this project's done and then we can announce it because it's done and dusted, we move on. Or let's use it. And again, it might depend on the individual, the character, because that character might be, I want to make sure this is the greatest. Let's go out on a bang, guys. Let's smash that. But yeah, I think it depends. There's so many variables that it's impossible.
I think what I would say, and this is kind of my default response, is anytime you delay, you've got to be really aware of the risk that comes with that. So to your point, you can delay, but people find out anyway, because it's very hard to keep a secret. When you've got to tell some people, because it's got to be an HR process. They're going to hand the notice in to somebody. So unless you are a small business, it's just coming to you and you're going to do nothing about it. You also probably want to start advertising for jobs. So people are going to start to see that. If you're anything like us, all roles get advertised internally and externally. So we don't, we might not have the right person in the business that we can see, but we always give people the opportunity to put their hand up. So the sooner you start advertising, the sooner you can start to find somebody. And typically, look at recruitment nowadays and the success of it you mentioned earlier. Even if somebody's got 3 months notice at a senior level, which is fairly normal of a senior role, and you hear some organizations at 6 months, very large orgs, but that's rare in the world that I live in, at least. 3 months, by the time you activate, advertise, recruit, go through a few interviews, then find somebody's notice period is potentially 1 or 3 months. Actually, you haven't got much time. So my view is the sooner you can do things, the better. And the moment you're starting to do things behind closed doors is the moment that you risk things getting out. Back to your thing about the project, where you got, I don't know, 3 months and they're going to have a project finished. You also get project slip. And I've done this before. We won't tell that client because it won't actually impact them and I don't want to upset it. And then the project extends out. And then I'm telling them last minute because I chose not to tell them. And now I'm telling them when we're 80% of the way through their project because they extended out. Like, no, you should have told them earlier. There's always a risk attached to it.
Yeah, but again, it goes back to that different approach of actually, if we know, in a longer advanced time, that period of time that we've got is 6 months, that we kind of proactively kind of assuming that there could be in the future someone's going to leave, or someone's saying, actually, I'm starting to look for other positions now. You can manage it far better, but it's that whole knee jerk, that 3 months. It's really difficult in any position. It's like someone hands their notice. It's like, damn, okay. As you said, got to go through recruitment, got to go through the interviews, got to get the right person, got to get them on board. You maybe want some overlap. So some of that kind of handover is nice and smooth. It's not a huge amount of time. But if you can get an eye on the future of that individual, where they're going, and are they happy? Are they looking? Because also, you say 3 months notice, but they've maybe been looking for a job for 6. They've had a 6 month window where they're looking for stuff. And I think that's where I took offense, saying wrongly so, because the individual that handed their notice in, it was obvious that they were looking for work months before they told me. And I'd built a relationship with that person. I was like, well, I would love to have known that you were looking for something else, because we could have tried to work something out, or I could have.
That's I told you. So do you think, because you can understand why somebody wouldn't, right? Which is, I'm guessing, again, I haven't been an employee for a long, long time, but I'm guessing it must feel quite confronting to go to somebody who employs you, that you built a relationship, and say, just so you know, I'm thinking of leaving you. Yeah, I am thinking of leaving you, and I am looking at other things, mainly because I guess things can change, and you might think, well, do I miss out on opportunities? And do I upset the apple cart? Does it make it uncomfortable? There's all sorts of reasons why that would be a natural way of doing things. But what I think you're suggesting is actually it'd be better for everybody if they approached you and said, hey, I am thinking of leaving. Can we have a conversation about it?
Yeah, this comes culture, and this is maybe for another podcast. The question, we were having difficulties in our professional relationship. So I understand why it happened, because they weren't necessarily comfortable with what my response would be. I always feel I'm super approachable, but that relationship had broken down over a number of months, probably 6 to 12 months, where, again, we can talk about this at another podcast, that individual, the mental health was struggling, panic attacks, and even connecting with me in a remote capacity. So it made it really difficult. So I understand the reason why. But again, I think from my side, we've been trying to work on that and develop that and get that back on track. And I think for me, I was trying so hard that when the resignation came in, I was like, I can't believe it. I've been trying so hard, and now the resignation's coming. But that's for another thing. That's maybe in terms of dealing with difficult situations in a professional manner in a work environment. But from now on, and from that moment on, it was always about, I want to know exactly, what the team are feeling, where they want to be. Are they feeling fulfilled where they are now? How can we ensure that it is with us? Or if it's not, how can we support them to make that change? And how do we allow a transfer, a transitional process with someone else that's coming in? But I'd say organizations that we've worked with, that we've spoken to about building this in, I think what we're seeing is more success in terms of understanding the future kind of transitions that are happening across the, I guess, their labor force, their employee, which they see as a favorable situation to be in.
On that, I don't often do this, or we don't do this, but I am going to give you a chance to sort of plug the work that you do on that front, because I think one of the things we do is we chat about everything else in this, but you never really talked about how you help businesses or how you can support across that sort of stuff, or the work that you're doing. So you've talked about it a couple of times in this, and we didn't plan this, so I'm putting you on the spot, where you've talked about you are doing some work with some organizations to help them to think about that. So maybe just share a little bit around that to get people thinking.
Yeah, I think in Career Habit Pro, we've worked a lot with students, with universities, from high schools through to PhDs, in being able to take control and ownership of their careers. But we're also now starting to work with organizations in supporting their staff be more proactive around their career design. Because, as I said, most people, when they think about their careers, is very reactive. I've been made redundant, I need to look for a job. I graduated from university, I need to look for a job. I'm terribly unhappy, I need to look for a job. And it's not conducive for the individual, because they end up making bad decisions around the jobs that they take. Because if you've graduated, you've probably got a fairly significant student loan to pay off. You apply for your first job, you don't get it. Second, third, you don't get. So then you start making bad decisions because you just need a job. Exactly the same as if you're made redundant. Good mate mine made redundant, looking for work now. I think he was quite surprised by the redundancy, but hadn't planned beforehand. He's got a good network and he'll be able to access them, that he'll be fine. And he's super smart at what he does. But it's encouraging people to kind of really build those proactive career habits when they're at the most happiest. When you don't need it, because then when it does happen, you're more prepared. But what we've started to see is, if we work with organizations and they support their staff in being proactive around their careers, then they think about their careers differently, because their staff come more proactive to their learning. They come more proactive to their own professional development, which can support the organization, because these are happier staff. They understand what they want to get out. They can have better conversations with their line managers about where they want to be or what they want to achieve. And they can build out more progressive career plans for their staff. So I think we're just seeing, if people are a bit more proactive in terms of their career design, it benefits everyone. It benefits the organization. It benefits the individual, because what we start seeing is more of a culture match as well. Individuals start identifying other organizations that they want to be part of and start building those relationships. But if the company they're already working with are proactive with that, then you tend to find that there's a better relationship between the two. Someone said to me as well, because companies can get quite protective of their stuff, but it's more about co-opetition, not competition. The co-opetition, if we all work together and support our staff, and people will move around to the organizations where they feel valued or that matches their values, and we should be able to find those better matches. And actually, it was I think Stephen Bartlett has just invested in a new type of recruitment organization that's basing recruitment on values, not on skill sets. But that requires someone to be proactive and really understand who they are. Anyway, I've kind of gone on a tangent, because that was
it's really interesting. I guess one question is there data, and maybe it's not available yet, or I'm sure there is somewhere, but is there data that supports this? Because it makes sense when you talk about it, right? Like investing in people, or encouraging people as an employer to plan out their career, even post working with you. And I think I can attach the benefits of doing that. But I guess the skeptics out there would go back to that old thing of, what is it, the Branson thing of, invest in people, train them so that they can leave, but look after them so well that they don't. the amount of times in my career I've heard people when selling training or working around training organizations, and they've said, oh, I really don't want to invest in these people in case they leave. And you think, oh no, it's so archaic, but it's still there. It's still out there. And those organizations would say, show me the data where this is the right thing to do. Are we seeing that sort of data come out where organizations are seeing a reduction in churn, an increase in performance because they're investing in this sort of stuff?
I think from our side, in terms of the companies we work with, it's too soon to really know. I think what we get at the moment is a positive response in how the staff, the employee, and the employer feel about the relationship. The staff are like to feel very appreciative of how the company is taking care of them. Yeah. It's too early for us to really know, have they been able to hold on and reduce that churn? You know, is there more opportunities? Far too early for us to know. But I think, you know, as you said, like the likes of your Richard Bransons and your Virgins of the world, it's still amazing how positive people seem to be when they work for Virgin, and the opportunities are there, and they do seem to be looked after. I don't know, that maybe it's a terrible place to work. Maybe some people that work for Virgin will be able to kind of write in and let us know their experiences. But you get that feeling that they love being there and they love being part of the organization. So I think it does work. I don't hear of anyone saying, no, you know, look at this organization that really rule by making people work for them and not investing in them and not giving them wider opportunities or to explore. I don't know any organizations that would necessarily be able to argue that is a better way of doing it.
No, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think you and I, again, we've come back to this thing, you and I will see things a certain way because we are who we are. Other people will look at it and probably be listening to this or watch this and go, what are they talking about? Why would you invest in somebody who's only going to be there for 2 years or whatever? And there's always a different perspective. I'm absolutely on the same side of the fence than you. I think you look after people, generally speaking, you'll always be better off as a result of it. And that's an overall life thing rather than just a work thing. And if you do good, if you invest in people, and I think, you know, particularly for a founder, which is where we always try and link this back to, is so you want to be proud of what you built and proud of the team and proud of the achievements. And the thing that people always ask me about building Air and, you know, we created nearly 100 jobs and all the rest of it. What are you most proud of? And that's always my response is it's the jobs that we've created, because that puts food on the table for people and that gives people their mortgage payments and all those sorts of things. And there's a number of people that wake up every day and Air provides that for them. And the second piece of that is it's the development. It's the people who have started with us early stage and who have progressed, or mid stage, who have progressed into senior roles. And I've seen them develop in that journey. And you know, there's lots of people who are no longer in the business that I look at and I think, by God, they started and they learned their first 3 or 4 years. They did exactly what I did. They learned the first 3 or 4 years on the job, learning it, doing the hard graft, and they've built a really good base and they've gone on and been incredibly successful elsewhere. And I'm just as proud of those people who I was close to, formed a big part of our early stage of the business and have gone on to be successful as the people who have done it within the organization. And we've got a really good blend of both of those. So yeah, I think it's a lovely thing, and you want to be able to sleep at night. If you're going to go down the route of being a founder and starting your own business, you want to be able to go to sleep at night and be proud of what you've built, not feel like it's somewhere that people don't want to be. And I think that's a good measurement of success, even if you haven't got the data to back it up.
Well, maybe we can get some more organizations on board, pilot a few things and see what we come up with. But I think that the key thing again is like this transition. It's just being prepared. Being prepared for any eventuality and trying to get as much forewarning as you possibly can.
And everyone can do that, regardless of role, regardless of what stage you're at. It's the unknown can happen tomorrow. What do you do if it happens?
Yeah, you just have to deal with it. Because sometimes things do happen. We've got a program in Rome. It was awful, terrible news yesterday. So one of the partners that we work with, I think it's like the president of the organization, passed away suddenly. He's gone. It's like, wow. Okay, so how do you kind of move on from that? How do you deal with those changes? Sometimes things happen, you know, where people just need to leave for personal circumstances, or you know, it's just not right for them. You know, we've had it recently that someone's taken a step back, just, you know, a couple of months or whatever, and it's like, okay, this has happened. How do we deal with it? And this is where, you know, your resourcefulness, your resilience, you know, your experience comes in. It's like, okay, so I can prioritize what needs to be done, what needs to be replaced. How do we change things? Who do we bring in? But I think these things tend to make us stronger, you know, when we deal with these things. So we then think about, okay, what went wrong, or what happened, or what wasn't working in that role, and how do we tweak it, and how do we change it? But I think the thing is when it is knee-jerk like that, sometimes you just have to make a bad decision to bring someone in to fill a void, to fill a gap, which tends not to work out that well.
Yeah, I've learned that lesson the hard way. It's like, don't do something. It's either recruitment, particularly for mid-level management roles or above. I'd rather recruit nobody and have a gap than recruit the wrong person. And somebody years ago taught me the phrase around that sticks in my head, and I share it a lot, which is not necessarily the nicest phrase to use, but better a hole than an arsehole. So better having nothing there than having probably arsehole is the wrong phrase. It doesn't necessarily need to be a bad person for it to be a wrong decision. It could just be that they're not good enough.
It helps it stick in your mind a bit, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I repeat that to my team all the time. Better a hole than arsehole, right? But rather have nobody there than have the wrong person there. And yeah, I think it's a very good reminder not to just knee-jerk react and go and hire. You know, you get through to the last stage, you've got 3 people. You don't think any of them right, but you hire the one that's least wrong. That's a very big, very, very big mistake, and one that I've learned the hard way, and no doubt you have by the sounds of things too. Indeed. I think that's a really good place to wrap up. So summary is leadership change is going to happen to all of us. We've got to be planning for it as individuals within our roles. We've got to support people with that and acknowledging it and accepting of the fact that people move on, but also it's about how you react to that once it happens, because it's inevitable, right? There's always going to be change, and it's how you communicate around that means that what happens next is either successful or not.
Sounds good. All right, buddy. Thanks for that. Great. It sounds like we've got a couple of guests coming in as well, which is exciting.
We have a couple of guests lined up. So yeah, over the coming weeks, we'll be releasing a few episodes with a few new guests. And if that goes well, we'll start to get some more in more regularly as well.
Perfect. All right, buddy. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. See you later.
Ciao.